There will never be another Dude Perfect. Tyler Toney, Garrett Hilbert, Cody Jones, and twins Kobe and Corey Cotton have been throwing balls at targets for nearly 20 years. They haven't evolved or even changed their content much from the very first video they ever posted. So how have they survived for 17 years in the most dynamic, constantly changing landscape in internet history? To be honest, they haven't just survived. They've achieved something that should be biologically impossible in the digital age. They're uncancelable. While every other titan of the 2010s was either consumed by drama, changed their identity to stay relevant, or simply just vanished, Dude Perfect has stayed the exact same. This is how you build an empire that will never be replicated. In the beginning, there was no master plan at all. It was just 5 college guys in a backyard, fueled by nothing but the desire to see if they could actually make the trick shot. They basically invented one of the most viral forms of content, the internet trick shot, purely just out of love for the game. They weren't looking to launch a billion-dollar empire out of it. They were just doing it for fun, not even knowing that they were about to catch literal lightning in a bottle. And in early 2012, they hit just that. YouTube took off. Viewers flooded the platform, and advertisers took note of all those eyes. But as all these views started pouring in, big decisions had to be made for Dude Perfect. Decisions that would have huge consequences later down the road. Because it was the early days of YouTube, they were pioneers in a space with no rules at all. But something was different about the dudes. They had their sights on something beyond the immediate hit of fame and quick, easy money. I'll show the clip of them talking about this, but early on into their career, they were offered a massive brand deal from a beer company.
Before GMC, the first brand that ever approached us was a beer company.
Yeah, Budweiser or something.
And I was 20 years old, so I wasn't even in college. And they're like, hey, we want to give you guys free beer as much as you want. Just put them in the videos. And they're like, it's just not, like, that's what everybody would expect, 5 college guys to kind of do in their first, if they were to get fame and have a video and things like that.
They realized that by accepting that check, they were narrowing their brand. So what'd they do instead of taking the quick, easy influencer money cash? They opted to enter the waters of uncharted territory and go a completely different direction than their college audience. They launched a mobile app for kids, and this thing was fire. The real ones will know, so comment down below if you played this game, but this thing was like Angry Birds on steroids. And I wasn't the only one playing it. The money started flowing in, but it wasn't influencer money, it was brand equity money. They were building their own personal brand from the very beginning. The app was a smash hit on the App Store, there's no other way to cut it. But their views were where they were seeing the real success. They were skyrocketing. Now, normally this level of fortune causes personalities to clash and egos to explode, but Dude Perfect was in it for the long game. But playing the long game with an audience that is constantly growing up and moving on isn't easy at all. I mean, we've seen people with kid audiences crash and burn in the past. So what made Dude Perfect different? How do you build an audience of kids that never grows up for 17 years? Their content hasn't fundamentally changed since their first upload. While every other creator panicked and tried to mature with their audience, Dude Perfect never tried to cater to the people who were leaving. They managed to stay kid-friendly in a way that wasn't cringe or corny, launching offshoots off of their trick shots like Overtime or Dude Perfect Stereotypes, some of the greatest videos that have ever been on YouTube. And they understood a fundamental truth that most creators are too insecure to accept. Their fans would eventually grow up and stop watching, and they were okay with that. They focused on staying true to the content they had mastered. The new content that they pushed into still had the same heart and soul of the original trick shot videos, and they continued just doing the trick shot videos because, that was working great for them. But the dudes stayed true to who they were, they stayed true to their friendships, and made content that they knew their audience would actually want to watch. They pretty much stayed the same and allowed new generations of kids to grow up through their content, while the old generations would still go back and watch it because it's actually entertaining to watch. But probably the biggest factor of how they were able to stay so influential and so successful for so long is how they were able to avoid controversy. 5 guys making millions in their early 20s is usually a recipe for a slip-up. But these guys are just genuinely good dudes. They're committed to their wives and kids first and influencers second. We don't see that very much these days. They realized from an early beginning that their brand was something that parents could trust and rely on. And they were never in it for like a cheap or quick exit. Launch a dumb little brand, make $1 billion, and then disappear off the face of the internet. These dudes were in it for the legacy. But some might say that the reign of Dude Perfect is coming to an end. As we sit here in 2026, the landscape is changing again. If you look at the raw data, their views aren't really what they used to be. The era of 100 million view trick shot videos is fading as short form content and live streaming take over. But Dude Perfect isn't panicking. They've already pivoted. Garrett Hilbert and some of the other dudes launched Almost Athletes, a podcast where they dive into sports takes, behind the scenes stories, and the reality of tour life. It's like a more intimate podcast. They're not chasing the 2016 numbers. I mean, these guys know that YouTube isn't the same platform it used to be. And whether they like it or not, their audience has grown up a little bit. But their content is pivoting more towards that older audience. I mean, basically an entire generation has grown up with Dude Perfect. And that's the reason they can never be replicated. It isn't because trick shots are that hard to do. I mean, some of their trick shots are pretty impossible, but we've seen other channels on the internet hit some crazy trick shots. But no, Dude Perfect is the blueprint because the discipline required to stay that consistent for 17 years is almost non-existent today. They never turned on each other, they never had a public falling out, and even through all the fame, all the fortune, and all the money these guys made over the past 20 years, they never compromised their morals in a way that could get them canceled on the internet. In an internet world that loves controversy, I mean, we love tearing things down and watching them fall apart, but Dude Perfect has managed to stay together. And even as the views die down, we will always be grateful for what they accomplished. So thanks, guys. Wait, let me do the actual outro. Pound it, noggin. See ya!